Hello students and welcome to E-Pathshala. My name is Prerna Trehan and I am an assistant professor at GGDST College, Punjab University, Chandigarh. In today's module, we shall be looking at the evolution of the discipline of international relations. Firstly, through the module, we shall try to understand the development of interstate relations. Next, we shall be looking at the importance of statecraft. Moving on, we shall also be looking at various phases of development of IR throughout history to the contemporary world. Next, we shall look at the idea of how international relations has become more multidisciplinary in its approach. Lastly, we shall also be looking at how international relations has now moved on into the direction of world politics as it has evolved over the years into becoming a discipline in its own right. In the previous module, we discussed in detail the nature of international relations theory with special emphasis on the boundary problem. We now have sufficient understanding about the overlaps that may take place between international relations and comparative politics. This module will specifically focus thematically on the evolution of international relations as an autonomous subject from the days of Greek city-states to the contemporary period. The single most important issue that international relations as a subject has to deal with is the issue of war and peace. The entire issue of the subject was prima facie an attempt to unearth the reasons for the emergence of war and the ways and means to ensure peace in the world. Historical period of Greek city-states. As a political activity, international relations dates back to the time of Greek city-states and the work of Thucydides, the Greek historian, who is famous for his work titled The History of Peloponnesian War. The Greek city-states were facing the intractable problem of managing conflicts between them, a problem central to the later understanding of international relations. The conflict between Athens and Sparta, the former being a weak city-state in comparison to the latter, reflected another important issue of international relations, that is, the issue of power and the powerful. It was on the basis of index of power that Roman Empire later prevailed over the Greek city-states. According to Barry Bruzon and Richard Little, the interaction of ancient Sumerian city-states starting in 3500 BC can be considered as the first full-fledged international system. The original point in the evolution of international relations must be traced to the period of Greek city-states because of the presence of conflict and small-scale war among the Greek city-states. Furthermore, the entire period from Greek city-states to that of the Roman Empire is beset with the theme of war, annexation, and domination, the theme central to the formulation of international relations as a subject. This is also the period when discourses on interstate relations were discussed in ancient India. Kautilya's Arthashastra was the treatise on the conduct of interstate relations, Treaty of Westphalia and its consequences. The state system took its modern form since 1648 when the Treaty of Westphalia was concluded. By 1648, England, France, and Spain had already developed into nation-states. The Holy Roman Empire became non-functioning. The claim of the Pope for temporal sovereignty was a thing of the past. Holland, Switzerland were recognized as republics. France and Sweden were territorially expanding, and so was the Kingdom of Prussia. As of 1648, England, France, Spain, and Sweden were considered great powers. Small powers included Denmark, Holland, Portugal, and Switzerland. Although the modern nation-state still retained its original pattern, yet it had been affected greatly by the great developments since the Treaty of Westphalia, such as industrial revolution, representative government, growth of international organizations, growth of economic interdependence, revolution in the means of communication and transport, as well as advent of nuclear weapons, etc. The period from Treaty of Westphalia, that is 1648, to the Treaty of Utrecht in 1713 was dominated by Louis XIV's ambition and by the rivalry of Britain, France, Holland and Spain for colonial supremacy in the Western Hemisphere. Britain played the role of the balancer during this period. After the Treaty of Utrecht of 1713, no European state could act without reckoning with the others. Sweden, Russia and Poland were involved in every issue of the West. The treaty highlighted alliances and balance of power as basic features of international system. It also gave impetus to the unification of Prussia. The period from the Treaty of Utrecht in 1713 to the Congress of Vienna in 1815, no state could permanently establish a political hegemony over Europe. In 1756, the 7 Years' War began. The defeat of Austria, France and Spain in this war, together with the exhaustion of Prussia, left no state dominant in Europe. The French Revolution of 1789 added to the idea that not princesses or an oligarchy, but citizenry of a state defined as nation should be defined as sovereign. Such a state in which nation is sovereign came to be seen as nation-state, as opposed to a monarchy or a religious state. Then there was the rise of Napoleon. In spite of violent disturbances, the period from Westphalia to the rise of Napoleon was relatively stable and peaceful. Diplomats in Vienna sought again to re-establish the old system. At this time, 8 states were considered as first-rate powers. These were Britain, Russia, Prussia, Austria, France, Sweden, Portugal and Spain. Though France was a defeated power, she re-emerged as a powerful body, mostly through the maneuvers of an able diplomat, Talleyrand. Between Utrecht and Vienna, one old state passed out from the scene, Poland, but a new state, that is the United States of America, was born. England, Prussia, Russia, Austria and France remained major powers, while Holland, Spain, Portugal and Sweden became lesser ones. The period from Congress of Vienna to World War I, that is from 1815 to 1914, the Crimean War, that is from 1854 to 1856, between Russia on one hand and Britain and France on the other, as well as the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 to 71, were important events resulting in replacement of France by unified Germany as the leading power. The rise of Germany was because of the brilliant diplomacy of Bismarck. His policy of blood and iron brought about the unification of Germany, and the German Empire was officially proclaimed. The decline in the power of France and Austria led to the addition of 2 new major powers in the European state system, Italy and Germany. During this time, Machiavelli's The Prince and Dante's De Monarchia illustrated classic studies on interstate relations. World War I and its aftermath. Down to 1914, the conduct of international relations was the concern of persons professionally engaged in it. War was regarded as the business of soldiers, and the corollary of this was that international politics was the business of diplomats. The World War I of 1914 to 18 made an end of the view that war is a matter which affects only professional soldiers, and in doing so dissipated the corresponding impression that international politics could be safely left in the hands of professional diplomats. The campaign for the popularization of international politics began in English-speaking countries in the form of an agitation against secret treaties which were attacked on insufficient evidence as one of the causes of the war. The blame for secret treaties should have been imputed not to the wickedness of the governments but to the indifference of the people. Everybody knew that such treaties were concluded. But before the War of 1914, few people felt any curiosity about them or thought them to be objectionable. Before the World War I, although discussions and reflections on interstate relations were present, no systematic development was noticed in the study of international relations. That war affected the life and property of millions during World War I made ordinary people take interest about the causes of war and ways for peace across the world. World War I started the process of abolition of distinction between combatants and non-combatants. All are likely to be involved or affected by such a war. This arose consciousness of the people, and there was a public demand for discussion and accountability of the formulators, executioners of foreign policy. This public awareness was culminated in the development of international relations as a subject specific in social sciences. International relations as a subject. The study of international relations as a separate intellectual discipline flourished during the entire 20th century, following the World War I. One of the most baffling and interesting features of the study of international relations is its close relationship with the collateral discipline which sustains as well as procreates the controversy about its autonomous position in the field of social science. States can hardly exist without relations with each other. Such relations may take diverse forms. Relations do not remain confined to the official level. They may develop as well through groups or associations as through international institutions. The study of international relations covers all such areas and is defined as the study of certain aspects of human behavior in the international arena, interacting with considerable frequency according to some more and less regularized processes. The initial phase. International relations as a distinct field of academic discipline began in Britain with the founding of the first IR professorship, that is the Woodrow Wilson Chair at Aberystwyth, University of Wales in 1919. Georgetown University's Edmund A. Walsh School of Foreign Service is the oldest international relations study center in the United States of America, also founded in 1919. In the early 1920s, the Department of International Relations at London School of Economics was founded. Very soon, various universities in USA, Geneva, and Switzerland introduced the Department of International Relations. The creation of posts of Montague Burton Professor of International Relations at London School of Economics and Oxford gave impetus to the development of international relations as an academic discipline. In the initial phases of the development of discipline, general history, diplomatic history, and international law became the three cornerstones of the study of international relations. The capitalization of I and R in international relations was introduced to distinguish the subject from the normal international politics. The basic aim of international relations was to promote peace and international cooperation by the demonstration of League of Nations. Thus, the initial phase of the study was dominated by the desire for peace. The Great Depression of 1929 and the rise of Hitler in 1933 started to break the rigid distinctions between domestic and foreign policies, and a new vista was opened for international relations. Following these two events, there was a series of international complications which culminated in a more brutal World War II, which showed the futility of existing attempts for designing world peace. The Cold War period. The impact of World War I and World War II and its aftermath on the study and teaching of international relations was tremendous. After the Second World War, it was felt that military science should be given some place in the study of IR. Importance of psychology in interstate relations was also emphasized because IR began to think why nation-states behaved the way they did. This political realism laid the foundations for the science of international relations. International relations has always oscillated between idealism and realism, and the balance between the two invariably depends on the tone and texture of contemporary events. Moreover, the changes that took place during the Cold War period from 1945 affected the study of international relations. Firstly, the nation-state system has become further institutionalized. Today, it has been globally embracing nations of all continents. Before the World War II, barring a few states, the whole of Africa and Asia consisted of colonial countries. During the Cold War period from 1945, the same region was bursting with a large number of nation-states. Secondly, with the internationalization of state system and shifting of the center of international politics from Europe to the Third World, the balance of power and collective security system has also undergone significant changes. Thirdly, institutions of world politics such as foreign policy, diplomacy, war, etc. have undergone increasing democratization in the sense that people are now being associated with working as well as results of these institutions. Fourthly, development of nuclear weapons has made war very dangerous and suicidal. People everywhere are clamoring for peace, disarmament, and promotion of international organizations. Fifthly, the establishment of United Nations Organization provides the necessary incentive for the study of IR. The entire Cold War period was an important phase in the evolution of IR as an academic discipline because new concepts such as détente, ideological war, containment, military blocs, aid, as well as theories such as neorealism, pluralism, neoliberalism, etc. entered into the existing body of the literature of IR. The post-Cold War period. In the post-Cold War period from 1989, the Soviet Union, one of the two superpowers in post-World War II period, collapsed and a few new states emerged which have formed the CIS, that is Commonwealth of Independent States. Two Germanys have unified and the world has become unipolar. In spite of rapid globalization, the nation-state system has remained the basic unit of analysis of IR. The international organizations like UNO, regional organizations such as European Union, and multilateral organizations such as BRICS are working in a new style so that nation-state system can be refashioned. The basic design of the state system, coexistence of a large number of states, is still the same with all states subscribing to the theory of sovereignty and all are impelled to develop national power as the mainstay of their national sovereignty. The post-Cold War period also saw one of the most brutal terrorist attacks in the human history in form of the 9/11 attack on World Trade Center in United States of America. In the contemporary phase of evolution of IR as academic discipline, it is important because of the advent of new issues such as globalization, terrorism, climate change, multipolarity, and new post-positivist theories such as neoclassical realism, social constructivism, feminism, etc. This phase has further broadened the nature and scope of IR as an academic discipline. International relations as an autonomous discipline. The evolution of the subject of international relations is informed by the determination present in the subject in scientific form. The general view is to borrow more and more from collateral discipline to better understand and explain international political reality and then present the discipline in the form of a science. In spite of enormous development of IR discipline over the past few decades, there is considerable debate whether it is to be seen as a part of political science or treated autonomously. As the nation-state remains the central actor, so IR cannot be separated from the subject matter of political science. Participating in the debate, scholars such as C. Dale Fuller argue that a discipline embodies a body of data systemized by distinctive analytical methods and capable of permitting predictions with exactitude. Morton Kaplan mentions that a discipline implies a set of skills and techniques, a set of theory, propositions, and subject matter. On the basis of these arguments, it can be said that IR has several theories but no general theory to be scientific. Moreover, IR is also lacking in respect of development of skills and techniques. IR experts Palmer and Perkins candidly observed that IR lacks clear-cut conceptual frameworks and a general applicable theory and depends often and for most part on better organized disciplines. In sharp contrast to such negative imagery of IR as an autonomous discipline, scholars such as Stanley Hoffman proclaim that IR can be intellectually distinguished so that it is an autonomous discipline. Further, he asserts that knowledge applicable to IR is no longer borrowed from political science but from all of the social sciences, and hence IR has gained worldwide recognition. Even now, being the youngest of social science disciplines, IR is popular all across the world. IR is now giving status of a near exact science and of a separate subject in various universities across the world. The scientific approaches to the study of IR have generated methodological revolution and introduced many new theories in the field of the study. In that sense, the discipline of international relations is concerned with factors and activities which affect the external policies as well as the power of the basic unit in which the world is divided. Subject matter of international relations. In the process of evolution, the discipline of IR, the subject matter has also broadened. Grayson Kirk identified in 1947 5 essential subject matters: the nature and operation of state system, factors that affect power of a nation state, the international position and foreign policy of great powers, the history of recent international relations, the building of a more stable world order. The scope of the subject matter of IR came up for discussion in 1948 at the Paris Conference of International Political Science Association, and it was decided that the subject matter of IR must include international politics, international organizations and administration, as well as international law. In mid-1970s, Vincent Barker, in a survey conducted under the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, identified 7 elements as fundamental subject matter of IR. These were nature and principal forces of international politics, political, social and economic organization of international life, elements of national power, instruments available for the promotion of national interests, limitation and control of national power, foreign policy of one or more major powers and occasionally a small state, history of recent international events. In 1985, Karl Dorsch further added 12 elements of IR subject matter, which are nation and world, transnational processes, international interdependence, war and peace, power and weakness, international politics and society, world population versus food resources and environment, prosperity and poverty, freedom and oppression, perception and illusion, activity and apathy, revolution and stability, identity and transformation. In the 21st century, the subject matter of IR has further broadened. Theodore Columbus and James Wolfe included following issues, including analytical approach to IR, theories of IR, nation states, nationalism, national power, national interest, foreign policy of nation states, diplomacy, war, balance of power, international law, international organizations, new actors within international system, etc. The evolution of IR as an autonomous discipline in 21st century encountered a milieu of post-Cold War period of war on terrorism. Thus, war remains key issue in the domain of IR, and as such, the subject matter of international relations includes more of a cooperative issue, that is, areas through multilateral institutional frameworks striving for world peace or at least to prevent a new world war. Let us now summarize whatever we have picked up in the module. We realize that through various phases of development, international relations has become more and more broadened in its approach towards study of politics in the world. The Westphalian Treaty of 1648 for the first time introduced the idea of the modern nation state. Since that time, moving on to the sphere of World War I, then the Second World War, as well as the Cold War, international relations has encompassed within itself numerous approaches and theories, making itself a diverse discipline. Furthermore, the rise of issues such as terrorism, environmental issues, global commons, etc. in the contemporary world have further enriched the study of international relations. Despite being one of the youngest disciplines in social sciences, international relations has now become extremely interdisciplinary and now warrants a right of being claimed as an autonomous discipline away from the idea of political science and its numerous theories. Thank you.